Hello folks, welcome back to another Monday night live stream. I hope everybody is well. Hope you've all had a fantastic weekend and I hope Monday has been treating you well. So we've got a few people in the chat already tonight, so I'll very quickly say hello to a few of those and then I'll also come on to it's been a bit of a tricky night tonight, and I thought at one point we were going to have to cancel the live chat tonight, but anyway, let's just have a quick look here. Of course my laptop's decided to play funny buggers here, of course it has. Let's go back here anyway. So, in the chat tonight, we've got Patrick in. Good evening, Patrick. I hope you're well, buddy. We've also got Henrik in as well. Good evening, Henrik. I hope you're well. And Henrik did message me tonight to ask about the live stream, and I'll come on to why he had to do that in a bit. We've also got Steve Evans is coming as well. Good evening, Steve. How the devil are you, my friend? Let me just try and see if I can sort this out, because it's the live chat had stopped. Here we go, we're back on now. So we've also got, if I can find out where everybody was, we said hello to Steve Evans. We've also got Christian Rees is coming as well. Good evening, Christian. Hope you're well, buddy. Henrik says he's that's it, we're just talking about that. We've got Georgie in. Good evening, Georgie. Hope you're well, mate. Tim Kelly's in, says, all right, Andy and all. Good evening, Tim. Tim is tucked away in his hotel tonight, doing a little bit of hobby. He put a nice picture on on Twitter tonight. He's all kind of sort of tucked up, painting away, watching a little bit of Tabletop Minions first, and then he's coming for the live stream tonight. So thank you for doing that, mate. We've also got Nick Yellendin, says, hey you guys. I'm not even going to try and say it like Chunk. Hey you guys, how are you doing, Nick? I hope you're well, mate. We've got Dan Bates in. He says, it's Dan from the BlackJack Gaming. Good evening, Dan. Welcome and thank you for dropping in. We've got Andy in as well from Peninsula Painting Projects. He said he's quite interested in this terrain crate. We'll be touching on that tonight as well. And for those that haven't seen the title tonight, after last week's video that I did about historical gaming, it really generated a lot of chat. Views-wise, it's done pretty decent for a video that wasn't kind of sort of a really popular kind of sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, kind of clickbaity type stuff. But the comments, people have taken a load of time and really put some effort into the comments on that video. So I thought it would be good to get in and chat about it a bit more. And Mantics Terrain Crate, which finishes in about 3 days, they've also teamed up with Warlord as well to do some very specific 28mm scale World War II terrain. So I thought we'd touch on the both of them tonight because they kind of link in together. We've got Stuart Noble in. Good evening, Stuart. Haven't chatted in a little while, mate. I hope you're well. Of course, all my chat jumps away there. We've got Robert in as well. Robert Zunk, good evening, buddy, all the way from the US. Thank you for making it in tonight. I know you've had a busy few weeks recently, so I appreciate that, mate. Georgie saying hello. Good evening, Joe. I don't think we've chatted before, mate, so thank you very much for dropping in. Skull Munch says, evening, buddy. Good evening, fella. Hope you're well. We've got Craig Lowther in. Good evening, Craig. I think I very briefly just saw you'd been painting some orc stuff as well, saying that you don't always do Space Wolves. Nice to see them, mate. He says he's been working on decaling all his zeros. Sounds like a plan. We've got Flying Mammal giving a wave. Good evening, Ruth. How are you? You had a good week? Tiberius is in. He says, I'm on a pooter, so my spelling should be fair to middling this week. I'm glad, mate. Nice to see it. I can always work out what you say. The Scottish sort of accent doesn't come over in the text. We've got Mark in, says, good evening all. Good evening, Mark. Mark's been bashing through some more Harry Potter stuff this week as well. Really loving that game. Nice to see. And Darren Whitehouse says, hail and well met, mucker. Good evening, Darren. How are you, buddy? What have you been up to this weekend? We've got VJ Morphin says, says morning all, sorry. I should at least get a time zone correct. Good morning, buddy. How are you? He's asking how tricks are. Tricks are pretty good. Thanks for asking. We've got Matt Mountain in as well. Says, what's happening, Blackjackers? Hashtag Mantic Monday. Well, we've got a couple of Mantic things to touch on tonight because we're talking about historical gaming and we're going to talk about Terrain Crate as well, of which Mantic have a bit of a toe in both. We've got Paul Ossen says, yep, everybody. Hope you're all well. Evening, mate. Hope you're well. And we've got Paul M in as well. Says, good evening. Good evening to you too, buddy. So, I've got a couple of things I wanted to kind of mention before we crack on. I wanted to say a huge big thanks to Bob Point. Now, I'm not sure if he's going to be in the chat tonight. He said he might try and get in, but me and him have had a good old chat on Twitter tonight, and he's really been helping me with some historical stuff. He said he was going to try and get in to kind of help out. Maybe he's got a different name in the chat. He might already be in, so I apologise, Bob, if you are. But he's really kind of helped me out, pointing me in the right direction with a few things. It's good because this is not my area of expertise, and I'm starting to kind of dip my toe in and try and understand more about historical stuff. So yeah, he's really helped me out today, so thanks so much, buddy. I also want to remind everybody as well that next week, how things are looking at the minute, there won't be any videos next week. So yeah, you can stop cheering now. There'll be no Monday night live stream, unfortunately, and I might try and get one video up next week, just to kind of keep things ticking over, give you something to watch while I'm away. But I am on holiday with the family next week, and I have promised that I will devote myself to the family for the week, take a break from YouTube. I'm sure I'll manage to squeeze in a couple of kind of Facebook messages or something while I'm having a cup of coffee, but there'll be no videos. I'm not going to do any video, and I'm not going to do any editing while I'm away on holiday with the family. So yeah, hope everybody kind of understands that, having a week off with the family, and then I'll be back and buzzing as normal from the 18th of March. And then that'll be leading up to our tabletop weekend. So there'll be plenty of stuff happening that week. Tiberius says, by the way, can you give Craig Lowther a shout out for me, helping me out on Space Wolves decals? Thank you very much, Craig, for helping out the community there. That's what this is all about. We're all in the same stuff. We're all in the same hobby. Helping each other out is what it's all about. So thanks to you, buddy. We've got Marco in, who says, hello, Andy. Good evening, Marco. How are you? Said he's painting some Blackstone Fortress heroes whilst listening to me. Well, I hope I don't put you off too much, buddy. And VJ says, enjoy your time off. Yeah, I've been having a little bit of a chat with Jason from Tabletop Oddity on Facebook today, and I'm not like feeling burnt out or anything like that, but I definitely feel that I'm kind of I think maybe like sort of mentally ready to kind of just have a bit of a refresh, just sit and chill and not worry about sort of grinding for a week. I've managed to do 2 full months this year of 5 videos a week. I've not missed an upload. I've not missed the 7 o'clock slot. I've not missed the Monday night live stream. So yeah, so next week's going to be my little breather, and then back on the hamster wheel again. Patrick is saying, enjoy the holiday, you've earned it. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I'm off to Centre Parks with my wife and my little boy, and my wife's mum and dad are coming for a couple of days while we're there as well. So I'm trying, backing up my video from last week about not being very healthy. I'm hoping to kind of get out and do lots of walking, a bit of bike riding around with a little one as well, maybe even going for a run while I'm there. Trying to eat a little bit better. We're certainly doing a bit of swimming and that kind of thing. So yeah, we're having a bit of a week away, or 5 days away anyway, and sort of just chilling, bit family time really. And then obviously that week I get back. The next weekend, I'm away Friday through to Sunday for the Top Table Legacy Weekender. So it's nice to get some family time before I disappear for a full weekend. Everybody's saying more than deserved. Have a good time. Craig saying no worries to Tiberius. You're welcome, buddy. And Steve says have a great holiday. We've got Sean Clark there. Says Bob Point here under my real name. Shush, don't tell anybody. Did you? I assume that you heard my thanks there, mate, and so I really do appreciate it, buddy. I don't know if you want to be Bob or you want to be Sean. We'll call you Sean tonight because it's in there. But thanks very much, mate. It really has helped me out. I just downloaded that book that you recommended as well, and I started kind of having a quick flick through that just before. It really is a good book, actually, and actually I'll mention it at some point on the stream tonight, just to give it a little bit of a plug as well. And we got Mark in as well. So from Dice Tales says, anyone fancy Micro Machine Gaslands at the Weekender? That could be a shout, mate. If nobody else is playing, I'll dive in for that one. I wouldn't mind giving it a shot. So yeah, that sounds cool. So I tell you what, I always get a bit of a flushed face. I think it's the kind of leaning forward. I've got my lights there, the heating's on. I start getting a bit flushed when I'm on these Monday night lives. Yeah, so we'll crack on anyway. So talking about historical gaming. I don't know whether everybody saw my video last week, but essentially my initial sort of efforts, or my initial my fleeting experiences with historical gaming really did kind of sum up with my cousin when I'm trying to think how old I was now. I was probably only about 8 or something like that. He sort of had some massive big Napoleonic armies, which I realised now I didn't then. And they were kind of like, it was a case of don't touch them, keep away from them. And I remember he used to travel all over the place playing with these kind of metal soldiers things. And to be fair to him, he introduced me to Judge Dredd because he used to buy the 2000 AD comics, and he also used to buy, I think it was Commando comics as well. Or it might have been Warlord, I don't remember now. But once he'd finished reading them, he used to hand them over to me. So that got me into Judge Dredd in 2000 AD and Strontium Dog and all that kind of stuff. Johnny Alpha. So that started my comic book love, really. So whilst he might have turned me off historicals, he did turn me on to comic books. And then much later, when I first went to my first gaming group, the guys that were there that played the kind of, when I say historicals, I think they played primarily Flames of War, but they were very kind of quite anal about stuff, really. They weren't the most approachable set of guys, and maybe that was me. Maybe it was partly me as well. Maybe I didn't make the right noises. I didn't really show that much of an interest in it, but they certainly didn't kind of excite me with the conversations to a point where I was really interested in what they were playing. But recently it's got me thinking about, the more I kind of learn about tabletop hobbies and tabletop industry, and the more I'm starting to make some contacts in the background with different companies and things, it's kind of got me about all the games that I've never played, I've never experienced, I've never even looked at. And that there's some niche games that are out there that really are good and don't get the love and attention they deserve. But then there's a whole area of gaming, probably the original area of gaming in historicals, that I just know nothing about. And it's not fair of me to kind of say whether it's not very good or whether I don't like them games, because I just never ever experienced them. So I thought the last at least I could do is really kind of dig in, have a little look about and see what it's all around, because the more I dig into it, the less that it feels like that kind of stuffy, I think something Sean mentioned today was about that stuffy kind of leather elbow, pipe smoking kind of era of stuff. And I'd like to kind of broaden the horizon of it and not make it feel so niche, I guess, because part of me thinks from my very sort of skewed viewpoint, that kind of historical gaming almost feels like it's declining, because it is an older age profile. Younger people are not coming in and playing kind of Black Powder or something like that. People are coming in and they're thrust into the world of Warhammer, they're thrust into the world of Age of Sigmar. They might be picking up things like Walking Dead or things like Fallout, maybe coming in through like sort of those IPs. And it would be good just to kind of broaden the appeal, really. So I'll very quickly catch up on some of the chat before I go on a bit further. Sean saying, no worries, Henry will be pleased. I'll pop a little note on Twitter later on, because I really do appreciate you pointing me in his direction. We've got Henry in as well. He says, are you going to talk about Kings of War historical? I am, buddy. It's on my list. As ever, I've got my notes again tonight. I'm all prepped. This is what I was doing when Patrick first there. When Patrick came into the chat and started talking to me, I was kind of fine-tuning the last of my notes. So yes, I will mention it, buddy. Patrick is on tonight's topic, my MDF bases from War Bases UK arrived, so I can assemble my remaining World War II Dutch soon. Nice one. Craig says, have you got your water handy? I have, mate. I've always got to have my water, because my throat dries out. Something terrible when I'm rubbing away at myself for an hour and a half. Nick saying, Gaslands is nuts fun. I've had a very brief experience of it using Hot Wheels stuff, but Micro Machines sounds pretty cool. Won't take up a lot of space either, to be fair. Robert says, yeah, have a good time away. Got plenty of videos to catch up on. Yes, I've certainly sort of been churning them out anyway. Nick says, Commando, mate, Little Popper comics. Yeah, I do remember that. I think, was it the Commando one that had kind of like a knife through the logo or something like that? That's kind of what stuck in my head. Where are we? Paul also saying, Battle D-Day Dawson for the win. God, yeah, it does kind of take me back now. Furious George is saying, comes in, sees historical, yawns and leaves. Just kidding, how are you doing? I'm doing really well, mate. That's kind of the point of this chat tonight as well, is that I guess if you go even just 6 months ago, that would have been my opinion as well. And what I'm starting to try and broaden my horizons and not close down avenues of interest, really, because I am interested in all kinds of board games. I'm interested in all kinds of war games and painting miniatures, and it's nice to have something different to look at. Otherwise, it would really narrow the channel down, and the whole point of this channel is really about the tabletop hobby, no matter in what form. Nobody's the way their hobby isn't right or wrong kind of thing. Trying to be inclusive for everyone's interests, I guess, which is dangerous in itself because it kind of spreads myself quite thin, but hopefully I can bounce around enough to keep everybody interested. Paulo says, people seem to make the change in their 20s. I don't know whether it's just the local groups that I've kind of experienced, but there's not a lot of historicals played. I mean, the closest thing we probably get to historicals is maybe a bit of like Gangs of Rome, or maybe even, I was going to say Frostgrave, but it's still very much fantasy, but I think it harks back to an older style game, maybe. But yeah, I don't see a lot of historical stuff played locally. Andy Smith's in. Good evening, Andy. Hope you're well, mate. He says, hiya, we like tanks. A very simple game. It's on my list. I'll definitely be mentioning that one. Sean says it's definitely a greying hobby. Flames of War and Bolt Action do help to bring on board 40k and fantasy players, but there is so much out there. I'm finding that out more and more, mate. I think I've probably touched on the real sort of extra sort of the tip of the iceberg. If I think the more you kind of dig into it, the more there is. We've got Simon Kean. Good evening, Simon. I don't think we've chatted before. If we have, I apologise. Thank you very much for dropping into the chat tonight. He said Saga for intro. I think that's very British Civil War for alternate history, and Perry's for bloody fantastic models. Yeah, I think a lot of people will remember, if they're not into historicals, they probably remember the Perry twins from the Lord of the Rings miniatures for Games Workshop. They certainly did a lot of those sculpts. But yeah, the Perrys do a hell of a lot of historical miniatures, don't they? Tim Kelly says, the Rivet Counter historical players drive me nuts. Really put me off. Once had an argument with W.H. Smiths while flicking through War Games Illustrated with some historical player. That was my experience as well. I think I mentioned in the video about kind of, you know, that grey's not quite right, arguing whether the German grey was this shade of Vallejo or something else. However, as people commented on the video last week, there are people in the 40k community that are just as kind of sort of staunch about that. You know, for example, Space Wolves have to be that colour grey, or you can't paint Ultramarines with that colour helmet or something like that, or that would never happen in the law. I think a prime example was recently there was a female commissar that's just been released for what would have been kind of Imperial Guard, is it Astra Militarum now? And there were a lot of people commenting saying, the model's nice, I'm not against women in 40k, but it says very sort of strongly in the background that sort of the young girls were taken away and the young boys were taken into the Imperial Guard, so you wouldn't have had female commissars. So I think there's people that will argue just exactly the same in that way. There was a strange conversation we had, well, I'm saying I read it, I wasn't part of it, in our WhatsApp group from our local gaming group, which was arguing about the height of the new Skaven, is it the no holes, and how high are the fences around it, and would a model be able to squeeze underneath it, or do you have to climb over it? So I think it's not exclusive to kind of the Rivet counters, if you like. It's certainly across many different areas of the hobby. Steve is saying, played loads of historicals over the years, everything from micro modern tank warfare to 28mm ancients. Yeah, there's so many, isn't there? There really is so many, the more I've looked. VJ is saying, I'm thinking I might have to check out Bolt Action. I'm trying to get my brother-in-law into 40k or AOS, and he's currently into military model building, so I think Bolt Action could be a good gateway. I think you're probably not wrong, mate. The more I kind of learn about it, the more that certainly feels like it bridges that gap a little bit. Somebody called it, what was it, Warhammer 1940k or something like that, which I thought was quite what's the word I'm for? Quite apt. Steve is saying, Cruel Seas and Water Tanker, very popular at my local club at the moment. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of good things about Water Tanker. Cruel Seas, I think that when there was a massive big errata came out just after the game launched, that kind of made me think a little bit like, oh, I might hang on a bit for that one. We've got Tabletop Hub in, says, crap, I'm late. You're never late, mate. You've arrived precisely at the right time. Good evening. Anybody that has not checked out Tabletop Hub, I found his channel when he subscribed to me a couple of weeks ago. And if it comes up as a kind of a notification that somebody subscribed, I always kind of sort of check out the channel or anything like that. And the quality on Tabletop Hub is absolutely awesome. Definitely worth going over, checking it out. Covers many different kinds of miniature games as well, much like my channel. So yeah, definitely worth going checking it out. Patrick saying, Osprey Publishing has a series of low-cost rulebooks on about every kind of conflict over a load of periods that generally require only a handful of models. Yeah, the more I dig into it, the more I find that the thing that kind of confuses me a little bit is I've always played games where there is a specific rule, there's a rule set and then there's a miniatures range. When they just say buy what you want, my head kind of goes, oh, like, where do I start? Like, is that the right gun? Is that the right model? Are those all the same kind of like scale? And I get a little bit lost off. So for me personally, I think certainly easing into something new, I think something with a miniatures range kind of helps me out a little bit. Furious George says, R.I.P. Keith Flint. The Prodigy was the background music to many of my 40k battles during the late 90s, early 2000. Yeah, I read that today. I mean, he wasn't very old, was he? Something like 49 or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I remember growing up to the Prodigy. Sort of Firestarter is a song that I think pretty much everybody knows. But yeah, very sad to see him go. Paul says, Rivet counting historicals are a thing, but no so more than 40k fanatics. Yeah, exactly what I just mentioned, mate. Marco says, I'd rather cheer for killing a plague marine than a Roman centurion. There is definitely an element of that, isn't there? I think when we start talking about sort of sci-fi and fantasy, you can almost kind of suspend belief, or is it? Yeah, suspend belief. And that it really is kind of made up. Once it starts becoming a little bit more real world, sometimes it can feel a little bit, it's a bit kind of real, like. And I've spoken to people over the years who say that they could never play kind of a World War II game because sort of you're killing people on a battlefield. People really did die in these wars, kind of thing, and it feels a little bit. It feels a bit wrong, I suppose, for want of a better phrase. It feels a bit wrong doing it, but there is a kind of. That's not my personal feeling, but I can see how people would feel like that. I guess in the grand scheme of things, it's no real difference to kind of playing Call of Duty World War II or playing, like sort of computer games like that. So, yeah, unfortunately, people die in wars. Yeah, if we could stop that, we wouldn't have any more wars. Paul says there are many more nice players than Egypts in both camps. Thankfully, that tends to be the case. I think if like us and you spend a lot of time online and you're in Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, it's the loud voices are sometimes not the reasonable ones. There's definitely a lot of very vocal minorities, I would say. But I guess that's more of a symptom of the times rather than our particular hobbies. Georgie says, where I am from, the historical guys are so damn chill and welcoming. I try to get into 40k, but the group, that's just jumped on the top screen. The group, my area, is much harder to break into. Yeah, 40k guys can be like that as well. You know, like in the same way, historical people. Let's just say it was a World War II game or something. In the same way, people are very much into the background and the history and the real world conflict and know every single detail about. In 1942, the Germans wouldn't have had that type of gun or something. People are that passionate and that sort of... They're going to be that excluding as well within things like 40k or Age of Sigmar or whatever. Tabletop Hub says that's been his experience of 40k. I was wanting to finally get into the game and had a chat with a GW employee in store. The more they talked about the community, the less I wanted to get into it. Unfortunately, I know exactly what you mean. The chat's going mad tonight. It's jumping all over. And Darren says, in his younger years, he was a Napoleonic fanatic, but I eventually grew tired of how restrictive historicals are. Now at 53, I'm loving the freedom of fantasy, albeit lion and dragon rampant. That's interesting. So you've kind of flipped the other way from it. Interesting indeed. I guess it's probably, well, I think from certainly from the chat in my video and from the chat tonight, it's probably more to do with the gamers than it is about the individual rule sets, isn't it? VJ is saying people who are overly anal in any recreational hobby, especially the gatekeeper type, can be super frustrating, especially when you're trying to get new people into it. Yeah, gatekeeping, I mean, it's not a new term, but it's one that gets bandied around quite a lot now about people who are almost very excluding of new people coming in saying, no, if you, like, your hobby's wrong and my hobby's right. And that's one thing I've always wanted to try and not have on this channel, is that however you enjoy your hobby, it's the right way. You know, nobody should tell you you're doing it wrong, kind of thing. Steve says, bolt action can be great fun, more like Hollywood World War II. That's my sort of, not my experience of it because I've not played it, but that's my view of what I can kind of see looking into it. Right, I'll dive back into my notes a little bit now as well, and I'll come back to the chat. So we're up to Tabletop Hubs. Hub, oh no, we're up to Steve Evans there, aren't we? 922. I remember that. So yeah, some of the games that's kind of been recommended to me, both in the chat on there, talking to Sean online today, reading as much as I can. So Two Fat Lardies is a company that comes up quite a lot when you start talking about historical games. Now I think you can kind of guess from their name, they're a little bit tongue-in-cheek with their approach to historical gaming. It's not two as in the number two, it's two as in too fat, like as in TOO. And those two guys are Richard Clark and Nick Skinner, and I've heard their names quite a lot. And I mentioned this to Sean today. I've heard their names quite a lot when I've started to dig into historical stuff. Some of the games that they're kind of well known for, certainly there's a game called Chain of Command, which is World War II at platoon level. So that seems to be a relatively popular rule set. They also do Water Tanker, that somebody just mentioned there as well, which is World War II tank combat. From what I understand, it's a lot of fun and it's quite sort of streamlined. It's not too difficult, but again, very kind of historically accurate. And then they also do one called Sharp Practice as well, which is a kind of a Black Powder era, 1700 to 1865. You can tell I've written that down and not approximated it. So very much more around kind of sharp, as in like, you know, Sharp's rifles and that kind of stuff. But yeah, certainly their games seem to get a lot of praise. The guys do a podcast. They appear on a lot of podcasts, as Sean was telling me today. And they certainly seem to, I think I've listened to them before on, is it Miniatures and Meeples, I think it is, on their podcast. I think I've heard them on there before, and they do seem like kind of genuinely quite the guys that love what they're doing kind of thing. So there's certainly some rules I'd maybe be interested in checking out. Certainly Water Tanker, from the point of view is I just need to get some tanks to kind of give it a try. That could definitely be a kind of a test for me, I suppose. I guess we also have to talk about Warlord, who are probably one of the bigger companies when it comes to historical gaming, and certainly from as an outsider looking in, but it might be that bridge, and it might be their kind of their staff being very much ex-GW as well. So the Bolt Action is obviously their big rule set, written by Rick Priestley and Alessio Cavatori. So again, there's a strong GW influence there, and as people have called it, it's almost kind of like Warhammer 1940k. It does seem very interesting because they're on to a second edition of the rules now. It does appear to be very much more Hollywood, and whilst you can be very historically accurate with sort of, you know, I'm only taking those guns from that timeline, from that time period, I'm only playing in that particular theatre of war, you can be very, very accurate with it. You don't have to be. So there's a big tournament scene for it. So if that was something that kind of sort of would maybe pique my interest, there's a lot of things going for Bolt Action, and the fact that there is a miniatures range as well, and there's already a big audience for it. What also kind of piques my interest is Conflict 47. So Conflict 47 takes the Bolt Action rules, it takes the Bolt Action miniatures, so again you're almost getting the option to play two different games, but then has this alternative sort of weird World War II storyline that says that the war didn't end in 1945 and it continued through 1947, and you start to get big kind of mechs and Tesla cannons and anti-gravity guns and things, which just and zombies, for example, which just gives it a little bit of a fantasy sort of sci-fi twist that could be like a... I think the rules are relatively similar. There's a few kind of tweaks and upgrades in Conflict 47. So that could be another bridging point as well. Warlord also do Hail Caesar, which is kind of Bronze Age, Egyptians, Roman centurions, Spartans, knights, all in 28mm range. And again, there's a number of different miniatures available for that as well. I'm not sure if that era of historicals, that feels very broad, so I'm not really sure whether that's something that attracts me yet, but I haven't done much digging into it yet, so kind of let's find out. Let's not turn it off. Warlord also do black powder, and they also do pike and shot as well, which are very much sort of certain eras of gaming as well. So before I come on to any more companies, we'll come back and we'll have a look in the chat as well and see what people are saying to that. I also haven't mentioned, when I mentioned Warlord as well, I haven't mentioned Blood Red Skies, and I haven't mentioned Cruel Seas either, which are, I'm not sure. Blood Red Skies is something that I'd be quite happy to kind of try, but for me it almost doesn't feel, I was going to say it doesn't feel historical, which is not completely accurate. I think I'd have to be into that almost X-Wing dogfighting game, or that Cruel Seas naval combat thing. Like, for example, Dystopian Wars was always something that used to interest me, just because I thought the miniatures looked really nice and crisp and good. But maybe when that comes back around, it might be something I'll give a little try to from a naval combat one. Cruel Seas at the minute feels like it needs a bit of it needs a time to bed in. The errata that came out came so fast after the launch that it felt like there was quite a lot of mistakes in the rule book. I'd like to have a demo, I think, rather than actually sort of spending any money on it at this stage. So, Tabletop Hub saying he totally agrees with VJ Morph, saying that the tabletop hobby needs to have that balance of always having folks who make the hobby accessible to newbies. Yeah, it's hard enough to get into anyway without people making it more difficult for you. Craig saying that Blood Red Skies is his history fix. Let me know what you think about it, Craig. Is it a relatively simple game to play? I think we chatted briefly about it on Facebook. I like the way you can kind of you tilt the planes back or lean them forward to kind of simulate different states within the game. I like the fact that the miniatures are sort of little small plastic planes. They're very easy to paint up, little decals on, very quick to kind of get ready for the table. I like that idea. Andy Smith, oh, massive big jump there. Where did we go there? Andy Smith. There's a lot of chat for me to go back. X-Wing is also great, clearly historical. After all, it's set a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Definitely made. So it's definitely historical. So playing Star Wars Legion, just because they've got laser guns, that doesn't make a difference, does it? Where are we at? Steve saying from Steve Small World, hi all, sorry I'm late, new shift for me at work. Never apologise for being late, mate. Always appreciate you popping in no matter for how long. Welcome to the chat tonight. VJ is agreeing with Tabletop Hub. He's saying that often goes to his local GW early in the morning and chat with the manager when no one's around. He often laments the gatekeepers and the sexist drivel he has to put up with. Yeah, I can imagine. Tabletop Hub says the employer I was talking to was saying that AOS has really been the accessible game for them. 40k has its ingrained folks, but AOS has seen lots of new players and just a nicer community all around. I would say I found it easier to get into AOS because I think there was a lot of people that were new to it, in the same way kind of the game hadn't been around for too long. So I kind of dove into AOS when I sort of, God, that must be about 2 years ago now, when I first sort of decided to try something a bit different. Really enjoyed it, but the game just moves quite fast with the amount of releases, and I kind of lost interest a little bit when almost kind of overnight the army I'd spent time building up didn't really do what it used to do anymore, and I didn't want to paint a whole host of models and start going into horde mentality. So I'm enjoying doing other stuff now, I think. Green Stuff Games has come in as well. It's jumped up. I've missed a few out there as well. Adam Eggers in says, good morning everyone. Good morning, Adam. And Green Stuff Games is in, here a bit late but not too late. Exactly, buddy, not too late at all. Paulo said his granddad was in the 8th Army during the war, so I've modelled a British Desert War Army in his memory. If you struggle with realism, think of it more as a Hollywood movie. Yeah, I personally don't kind of struggle with it, but I know a lot of people do, and I think it's quite nice that you can kind of remember him in that way, I guess. Tabletop Hub says, went in the store to get 40k, came out wondering whether I should get into AOS. I think AOS is establishing itself now, and it's been going long enough now. I mean, we're on to General's Handbook 2, probably General's Handbook 3 is due this year, that I think AOS is becoming much the same now. There's a lot of people that are very ingrained in it now, but obviously not as deep kind of time-wise as 40k. We've got Luke in from Luke's APS. Good evening, buddy. How are you doing, mate? He said, there's always an arsehole. There's normally more than one, mate. VJ says, it sounds like it worked then. Henrik is saying, people don't be stupid. It's still just a game. Unfortunately, buddy, people get very, very attached to their games. Just look at the amount of people that sort of burned all their Warhammer stuff and things like that. I'm not saying I disagree with them getting upset, but there's ways to show your anger, I suppose. Sean says the morals of historicals can put people off, but then games like Grand Theft Auto are near the knuckle morally too. Yeah, there's an element of that, isn't there? Like you almost kind of like that's completely fine. I don't mind the fact that we're butchering people with chainsaws in this game or anything like that, but I feel really uncomfortable with historically accurate World War II stuff. Patrick says the game that got him into full pelt into World War II was Bolt Action. He added Blood Red Skies to it last year. What a Tank is great too. Tabletop Hub says the Two Fat Lardies seem like such genuinely decent chaps. And Paulus is saying Two Fat Lardies stuff is brilliant, great fun to play. Chain of Command's brilliant. Sharp Practice is definitely full of swashbuckling action. And Sean saying they appear on Beasts of War too. Yeah, they certainly. The more I dig around, they weren't names I recognised until I started digging into it. But yeah, they certainly seem to be sort of. I was going to say the gatekeepers, but we're just saying that's a bad term now. They seem to be almost up there amongst the legends of historical gaming. Nick says, all hail the Priestley. And Michael's in as well. Good evening, Michael. How you doing, fella? Luke says, Wolfenstein Bolt Action. Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is. I mean, if anybody's seen the Reichbusters from Mythic Games, Conflict 47 seems to feel that a very, very similar thing where all sorts of weird kind of laser cannons and Tesla guns and these big walking mechs and stuff. And again, they've got these, I saw they've basically got these German zombies, are they called Totemkopf, I think it is. And they've got a rule that if they get within 6 inches, they cause fear. Of other models, but they also cause fear within your own army as well, so you've got to make sure that you have them aware. I just felt that was quite kind of interesting, very Call of Duty zombies. Where we're up to now. Tim's saying Conflict 47's cracking, great minis, nice freedom with painting. Yeah, and I guess you're painting up a Bolt Action army at the same time as well, which is almost kind of easing yourself into a historical gaming. Patrick saying Nick Yellen's ace. He's ace. Still have his War Master Ancients rules. Simon Key. Good evening, Simon. How you doing? Said Secrets of the Third Reich for even more weird War II. I remember hearing about that game. That's got like werewolves and stuff in, hasn't it? I've not seen a game played. I don't know what it's like, but I do remember sort of seeing the miniatures for the game. Where are we? Robert Zung saying, seems like a few historical games are going for the Skirmish format, focusing more on good fun game. Yeah, there's a couple of Skirmish games I've got in my list here as well, and that's another way to ease people into historicals when there's not a big model count. We're talking about Blurple again. Michael says, let's quit this. Dystopian Wars is coming back in 10mm, I believe. I think it's coming basically kind of in this scale. It always was, wasn't it? Wasn't it not 10mm before? They were just, it's been part of the Wild West Exodus world, though, isn't it? It's going to be kind of, is it the dystopian, dystopian age, I think it is. It's all part of the same world, if you like. Robert says, Cruel Seas is fun, but yeah, it's got problems. really got disgusted with Japanese starter. All the masts were bent badly or broke. Might come back if the rules get fixed. Yeah, that's a real shame because it could be great. It could be great. And Patrick is saying to Michael, he's tried to read the rule book for Dystopian Wars once, tried after 30 or so odd pages, I gave up. Yeah, hopefully they streamline that a little bit, eh? So, coming on to another company. So we've got Battlefront Miniatures, and they do Flames of War, and they do Flames of War in 15mm. So it's a bit of a different scale if you're used to 28mm. The only small scale stuff I've ever painted before was Drop Zone Commander. Excuse me, spit that again. It was Drop Zone Commander. And I found painting the kind of like the humans sort of size models was really, it was easy to do because there's not much of them, but I just felt like I wanted them to be nicer painted than that, I think. So for me, smaller scale would be fine for things like tanks and that kind of stuff, but I'm not so sure from a human or a troop perspective. Now, I think Battlefront and Gale Force 9 are almost kind of certainly in it together, or they're sort of sister companies. I'm not sure what the relationship is, but certainly they also do the tanks game as well that somebody mentioned earlier on. And tanks is essentially kind of X-Wing with tanks. So you've got the movement templates, the rules are very straightforward. One thing going for it is that it is so cheap as a starter set. I've seen the starter sets go for like about 11 and 12 quid. I've seen the individual tanks for sale for about a £5. It really is a very accessible, really cheap game to kind of dip your toe in from a historical aspect. And it seems like a lot of fun. The tanks that you buy for Tanks of the Game are the same scale as well for Flames of War. So if you did want to grow, if you did want to grow from there, it's a route into Flames of War. And there's also Team Yankee as well, but I kind of ran out of time before the chat tonight, so I'm not entirely sure what Team Yankee is. I don't know if that is a kind of a weird war thing as well. I don't know whether it's a more sort of up-to-date timeline. It might be more modern tanks. If anybody knows about that one, please do shout in the chat and let me know what that one is. Let's have a look and see what's going on here. There's a random chat about Blurple there. I'm sure, Luke, somebody will explain it to you, mate. Michael basically mixed a couple of washes together and got the perfect colour for his Night Stalkers. And then, where are we? Henrik saying you need Blurple. Luke saying +3 readers. Hey, that's what I need as well, mate. Tiberius is saying bolt action is too small. You're better going 20mm. I thought bolt action was 28mm, mate. Maybe I'm wrong. Margot says, how the heck do people paint eyes in 10mm scale miniatures? I struggle with 40k stuff already. Yeah, tell me about me. You're not wrong. I noticed the scale of stuff. So when I got back into trying to do some 40k stuff, I was painting Death Guard and Space Marines, and it wasn't until I picked up the Gene Stealers to paint from Kill Team that I realised how much smaller they were than those kind of bigger scale models. I'd never painted any Imperial Guard or anything like that for scale. We've got Johnny Jambo in. He says, if I paint up my Star Wars Legion Stormtroopers like Nazis and my Rebel Troopers as allies, my AT-RT like a Sherman and my AT-ST in Panzer paint scheme, can I call it cinematically historical? Well, as somebody mentioned, it's definitely from a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago, so it's historical. Luke saying modern day 15mm. Is that what Team Yankee is, mate? Is it? That would explain it then. Because I was going to come on to that, actually. I'm sure there will be some rule sets, but there's certainly nothing that I've seen that is more kind of modern day. Now, I always assumed with things like the success of Call of Duty, sort of Modern Warfare 2, those kind of games, I always assumed there would be some modern miniature gaming as well to try and attract some of that crowd in, but there's certainly nothing that I've really seen, and maybe I've missed some stuff. I think I remember there's a Flames of War expansion that was Vietnam, I think. Maybe I've remembered that wrong, but I seem to remember that from a few years ago. Paul is saying Team Yankee is what if World War III happened in 1985? It's future World War III. Ah, okay, it does all make sense now then. Paul's saying it's the Warsaw Pact versus NATO. Best bit is you get to use chieftain tanks. I guess that gets over the kind of the feeling emotionally kind of attached to real world wars, doesn't it? It becomes, I suppose, it becomes historically accurate in the fact that it's the real weapons and that kind of stuff, like the real loadouts for the tanks, but it's not like a real war, if you like. Michael's saying he's sorry about the blurple thing. Don't worry, mate. Don't worry at all. Paul says, oh, sorry, I missed that from Patrick, saying bolt action's 28mm, but I played it on 15mm once and it worked a treat. I've heard that as well. That I think even in the rule book it says that, so you don't have to play it at 28mm. Tiberius is saying Flames of War. I always thought Flames of War was, yeah, is it not 15mm? Yeah. Michael saying I think Spectre is going to Modern Warfare with Rules 2. That seems amazing. It's not a game I've heard of, actually. I'll have to watch out for that one. Patrick says Tanks Moderns a bit of a step up to Team Yankee, and Warlords going over to the Korea War with bolt action this year. Interesting. I did see there was a couple of starter boxes for tanks, and one of them looked like it was more modern. Craig says I find BRS. BRS. I wonder what that is. Am I missing something? BRS. Battle. No, let me know what BRS is, mate. It says an easy game to pick up and play. It can be fast paced, kind of like 3D chess. The fact that I love. Oh, Blood Red Skies. I saw the planes bit and reminded me. Luke says there's a massive stigma about it. Seen some massive arguments about it. Yeah, I can imagine. We kind of touched on it earlier on about how people feel strongly about sort of not playing real World War II stuff. So I can imagine if you start getting like into kind of Afghan conflict and sort of Iraq wars and stuff, I can imagine people are still out there. So I can imagine that it becomes a little bit touchy. However, in saying that, games like Call of Duty didn't really seem to kind of bother people at the time. Or certainly wasn't. Maybe they were so popular it drowned out any noise. Green Stuff says, I played a 15mm game called Alien Squad Leader last week. It's not historical, but it was a lot of fun. How do you find the size of those miniatures at 15mm? Because for me, half the fun of playing these games is the miniatures themselves, and when they get so small, it kind of loses some of the appeal for me. Michael saying version 1 he never played, but that is Modern Warfare, or at least recent history. Henrik saying he backed Reichbusters, really like Weird War. Think of Conflict 47, but do not have the time. Yeah, it's always a consideration of how much time you've got to learn another rule set as well. Paul says if you want modern skirmish, try Spectre Operations. Version 2's just come out. Yeah, I think that's what Michael was just talking about as well. I'm not sure I really want modern stuff. I think it's just I wasn't really aware of anything, I think. Tiberius is saying he's going to be snobby. Maybe they used the War Games Factory World War II stuff that snafu'd and then had M43 jackets and M45 weapon. Now, I'm going to specifically answer that. So what you said there is a foreign language to me, basically. I think I know what snafu means. Is it something about situation not as first understood or something like that? Is it? But when you start getting into M43s and M45s and people start talking about like 5-pounder guns and all the different weapons, honestly, it goes right over my head. I think I mentioned in my video last week, I didn't learn about World War II at school. For whatever reason, our school did not have World War II on the curriculum. We learned about the kind of the Roman aqueducts and the kind of the Roman baths, and we learned about the Industrial Revolution and textile industries. But this week, I did start watching World War II in colour. And I must admit, I was kind of fascinated after that first episode. I'm obviously kind of broadly aware of what happened all those years ago, but the details of it, the show is actually really interesting. The fact that they spent all that time putting it into colour actually makes it really impressive as well. But I can see myself getting sort of getting interested in it from that point of view. But at this point in time, M43s and M45 webbing and stuff like that is just. Whoosh. But to be fair, I'm like that with 40k when they start talking about certain guns and certain weapons. And when people are saying you want to equip it with this gun or you want to do it with that gun, and I'm just looking at a big sprue of stuff going, which one's that? I haven't got a clue. That looks like it could be a pistol. Is that a plasma pistol or is that a plasma gun? I'm not really sure. So a lot of that goes over my head in a lot of games. I love playing games. I love painting miniatures, but I love to jump around and try different stuff. So I don't think I get invested enough to really get into the fine details of all that kind of things. However, with World War II stuff, watching this show, if there was a 40k show, I'm sure I would learn that kind of stuff too. Luke's saying, sorry boys, got to go and record. I'm running out of time and I'm getting distracted. I know that feeling, buddy. Thanks for dropping in, mate. He said, see you in a few weeks. I will do, mate. Looking forward to catching up, mate. And I definitely owe you a beer. So I'll see you then, mate. Paul says, quite a few military types play war games. A lot find it therapeutic and interesting. Depends on personality and experience whether you find it a problem or not. I just picked up the most recent episode of Tabletop Gaming Magazine, and there's an article in there about military personnel in the kind of training academies playing it. But it's not to learn the tactics of war or anything like that. It was to improve their English. So any of the kind of sort of foreign-speaking military that come across to train, it was a really good way of them improving their English language skills. So I thought that was something I would never have even considered. Marco was saying he wouldn't mind playing a historical game as long as there's an asterisk obelix in it. Have I imagined it, or is there a I forget what it's called now. I forget what it's called in French now, but yeah, the Asterix and Obelix comic books, I remember them from being a kid. Robert says he switched from 15 to 28 millimeters. Sean saying situation normal, all effed up. I knew it was something like that, yeah. All fouled up, yeah, but the foul gets swapped, yeah. I think I've seen that in the Warlord books, haven't I? Tiberius is saying it's date designations. M43 jackets on American uniform and webbing is the date. The M43 jacket is the green job with the chest jackets. I'm sure I'll learn it eventually, mate. Green Stuff says you enjoy the sight of the mass more than the details on one particular model. Yeah, that's kind of me, really. I like to see it all. You know, I like to see a big army together, but I wouldn't be able to sort of. Well, certainly not at this stage. I wouldn't be able to say that's a certain type of gun and that's a certain type of gun. I remember certain ones from playing things like Call of Duty. So I remember kind of Browning rifles and that kind of stuff. But yeah, a lot of it's kind of gone from my memory now. Sean's saying with historical scales other than 28mm, other than 28mm are widely available. 6mm can be really impressive. The mantra is paint the unit, not the figure. I might actually just pick something up just to try and paint something of that scale, because I've never really, like I say, other than those Dropper Zone Commander stuff. But the Dropper Zone Commander the troops, if you like, were a very small part of that game. Most of the time they were inside transports. Green Stuff saying she really enjoys mass battle though, so it's not a surprise I like it. Yeah, that would make sense. Paulo says World War II is easy to paint as well. See, that was where my experience was of, as we called them before, the rivet counters, if you like, was that that's not the right grade. How can you possibly use Dawnstone from GW to paint the trousers on a German officer or something like that? It was that kind of conversations that made me think a little bit like, just not worth getting into these kind of arguments, really. But from what I understand, like in any game, you have those extremes. That's how some people like to do their hobby. It's not how I do it, but it doesn't mean that they're wrong and I'm right. They like the very, very historical accuracies of the game, and that's what they enjoy. I just wonder whether there's a clash, a much bigger clash of hobbyists and styles within a historical gaming. Sean saying there was a refight of the Battle of Towton, the War of the Roses with 6mm, with 20,000 figures on the table. Now that's something I wouldn't fancy painting 20,000 figures. Bloody hell. It takes me long enough to paint about 5. That's real commitment. That's when you get people sort of like over years, isn't it, of painting armies for years. I remember we had JJ Model Making in the chat last week, and he's into building models, a lot of sort of ship models and stuff. And there was one particular model that he'd been building for 4 years. That's real commitment. Michael says, you know what boggles me more than once? There's oodles of World War II, but no World War I. I wonder if it's just to do... I've got no idea. I was going to try and come up with a reason, but I can't think of one, mate. Patrick saying that there's a few World War I games. TFL have one. TFL. Two fat lorries, that must be, yeah. Most of it's trench warfare. Green Stuff says, I struggle to enjoy any game with Nazis in it. I just can't. There's nothing fun about Nazis. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And a lot of people would probably feel that they wouldn't want to kind of actually do that particular army for that reason. Michael is saying about scale. How cool would it be to have 75mm skirmish game? Bloody hell, mate. You'd need a big table, that's for sure. Or it would just be a little fight in a back alley. Tiberius says, colour means sod all in military uniform. I've got mint US World War II kit and no 2 bits are the same colour. There's a lot of people say that, but then my experience is of people arguing over it. So it doesn't bother me, and I'm at an age now that where, bugger it, if somebody wants to have a go about the wrong shade of grey, I don't think it would bother me now. But back in the day, when I was on the fringe of maybe, oh, what are they playing? That was exactly the kind of thing that put me off. Steve says, Napoleonic in 6mm looks great with the big units and bright uniforms. I'm trying to think back now to being a kid, really, what scale that would have been. I think it'll probably have been something like between 20 and 28mm. I don't think it was as big as 28mm maybe, but they were certainly, I remember they weren't tiny anyway. Green Stuff says, I never played 75mm. Does anyone know of any good 75mm games? What about, was Inquisitor for GW, didn't they have bigger scale miniatures? I don't know how big, were they maybe about 50mm or something like that? But I'm pretty sure the Inquisitor miniatures used to be bigger. Sean saying, need to speak to the wife. Thanks for the chat. Thanks for coming in, buddy. And I will definitely be in touch to pick your brains a bit more. Paul also saying, just use Vallejo paints, mate. When they have names like British Battle Dress, you can't go wrong. Yeah, I think there's like a German grey from Vallejo as well, isn't there? Michael said he bought a set of his minis to paint up as a demo or diorama build, but too afraid to paint them up. 3x3 would be good enough. Yeah, I suppose so. 3x3 though, you're talking about 3 times the size though, aren't you, to go from 28 to 75 roughly. So if you're starting on 2x2, that you'd almost be going 6x6, wouldn't you? Tiberius is in Normandy firefights, 135, just have tons of terrain. Inquisitor was 56. I remember it being bigger, but I couldn't remember exactly what size. We've got Decadent Nightmare. Good evening, Decadent. Welcome to the chat. Nice to see you for the first time. It says, at high school, our form teacher got a group of us into playing Napoleonic Wars. Made school worth going to. That's good teaching, that, isn't it? That's what you want. Anyway, I'll go back to some of these ones I've got here. So, Kings of War Historicals was something else I wanted to mention as well. So it uses the Kings of War rule set, but there are lists for historicals. And the way it's designed is you can fight a Kings of War army against a historical army as well. So that's quite an interesting way to bridge the gap and maybe find a different way into it. Saga is also a skirmish level game as well, and that is by Studio Tomahawk. Takes about 30 models, very much more kind of Viking era, that kind of stuff. We've also got Gangs of Rome and we've got Mortal Gods. So another 2 kind of skirmish games. Gangs of Rome obviously being Rome gangs and Mortal Gods being a very much, whilst it's historical, it's almost that it's kind of Greek gods, isn't it? So it's on the fantasy side of historical, I suppose. And then obviously we've also got Lion Rampant as well, which is kind of use any models you want. Uses a really a historical rule set. They also do Dragon Rampant, which is a fantasy rule set, but you can basically use any miniatures you want as well. So I've just saw here as well, Michael's just saying no one talked about Runeblade Fantasy Skirmish. Don't think I've ever heard of it, mate. So yeah, so I think that'll probably cover quite a lot of the historical stuff I wanted to chat about tonight. But I just wanted to kind of show that there's some roots into historicals with things like Conflict 47, with things like what was it? Something about the Third Reich. I forget what it was called now. With those kind of games where you can start painting a bolt action force with a few zombies and some kind of Tesla cannons, and then if you want to, you can always migrate across and use them same, not the zombies and the Tesla cannons, but you could use those same troops and stuff and tanks in a more historical rule set. So there are options to get into it that way. There's games like Gangs of Rome, games like Saga, where you can buy small scale, small war bands, give them a try. And there's games like Tanks, where literally for £15, you get 2 or 3 tanks in there. You get everything you need just to dip your toe in and give it a try. So just because it's something that you've maybe not really been interested in before isn't a reason to necessarily give it a bit of a try. And at the end of the day, they're still just war games. In the same way 40k is a war game, in the same way AOS is a war game, they're just basically battles with missions, with objectives that just happen to have a different range of miniatures. I just saw at the bottom there as well, Skullmunch is saying, sorry, not historical, but looked into Aristia as you gave it praise. Picked it up today, just had our first game, really enjoyed it and looking forward to playing it more. Nice one, buddy. I really like Aristia, and I like the way you basically just you pick any models you want. There's the balancings within the game itself. You just kind of, you pick what you want to play. Right, so something I wanted to talk about tonight as well, getting on the back of the historical stuff, is Mantics Terrain Crate 2. So at the minute, I think it's got just under 3 days left to go. And this is really going to test my technical knowledge now, because I've got a screen over there that's got the one I'm going to show you. And then I've got a screen down here because I can't read that one. So let's flick across to here. And yeah, so Terrain Crate 2 at the minute has reached a very impressive nearly £203,000 with almost 2,400 backers, and we've got 69 hours left to go. Now, the way it started initially was, let's flick back to my face for a bit. The way it started initially was, you could buy either 1 crate, 2 crates, or all 3 crates. But as new things have been unlocked, it's very, very different now. So you now have the option to almost even just pledge as a bit of a pick and mix type thing. So let's flick back across. So what we've got is each crate is £60, or £65, sorry, but there's more than £100 worth of stuff in it. So there's some stuff from Gothic Manors, which would look great in games. You can imagine it in some of the scenarios in Hellboy. We've got things like Servants' Quarters. The Groom Garden set could pretty much go in most eras, really. And Bleakwood Mausoleum, again, just because it's a graveyard doesn't mean it has to be specifically kind of old or fantasy or anything like that. There's a Two Trees Mall for Campbell Heights, which is essentially would fit really well with something like Walking Dead, especially with the new bigger scale Walking Dead coming. We've also got some sort of camp there. Again, Walking Dead's perfect. And some kind of factory stuff, abandoned office where we've got sort of pallets and a little forklift truck and stuff there as well. There's Bellevue Square, which can be fantasy, could also be more modern day, maybe even a little bit of World War II. These look almost kind of sort of French town type things. There's a Bellevue Hospital one, and Cozy Cottage, Peaceful Park. Now the ones I wanted to come on to really for today for the more historical stuff was the Mournville Ruins. So this one includes 91 pieces, and this is the Papers, Please crate. Here you've got the kind of like the checkpoint with the dog, the checkpoint barriers. We've got some sandbags here as well. There's some barrels, there's some boxes, there's some road signs. There's all sorts of wreck and ruins as well that would look really sort of good scatter terrain dotted about. There's some crumbling cottage stuff, so you can always have these inside. Certainly the warlords do those kind of ruined buildings that they do in some of their starter sets. These would look great dotted about inside. They've also got some church stuff there as well, so there's obviously, you can kind of add a lot of sort of church terrain and stuff into the sort of World War II type games as well. And these are all 28mm. So there's a heck of a lot of stuff there. If you're into your World War II gaming, or you're into your more historical stuff, a lot of that Mournville Ruins stuff really would fit with it. Now, if I go back, I think it's at the top. Sorry for scrolling so fast here, folks. I don't know if it's on this, but there's been a lot of stuff that's been unlocked. It might be. Is it in here? Let's have a quick look in some of the stretch goals, because there's some kind of ruined bits of motorbikes and stuff as well that would look awesome in modern day, but also in World War II stuff as well. I can't find it at the minute though, but let's you can certainly go and check it out. But yeah, it's a really kind of different thing. There's not a lot of companies doing that kind of scatter terrain for World War II stuff. So it's definitely something worth checking out if you're into your 28mm historicals. But yeah, there's less than 3 days left to go now. Even if you wanted to sort of dip in for a pound and decide on the stretch, decide what you want to pick up when the pledge manager goes in, it's what I would say quality wise. I bought a set from Michael actually of the battlefield terrain, and I use it for my Kings of War games. And I'm really pleased with the quality. I know some people don't like the plastic that it's made of, and that it warped a little bit, maybe sometimes when it's come out of the molds, but it's nothing worse than we've seen with other stuff. A bit of hot water and it's straight out. I like the fact that it's not like resin, because I don't mind just throwing it back in the box. It doesn't get damaged when I'm just throwing it back in the box and getting knocked around a little bit. Simple dry brushing really brings it up as well, and it all comes in coloured plastic. So you could technically not even worry about painting some of it. Patrick said he's not backing it. There's too much stuff where I think that piece is coming out bent in all directions. I mean, some of the wall sections that I got and the fences were a little bit like that, but honestly, with a bit of hot water, it's straight out. So, and for example, I got the what was it again? The weird miniature stuff for the other side. Some of that was a little bit bent as well. And again, the hot water straightened it out. And I appreciate you shouldn't have to do that, but it's a small price to pay, I guess, for what is essentially sort of good quality plastic terrain. There's not a lot of it about, so it's certainly scatter terrain. Paul also saying, why do Mantic kickstart everything? To be fair to Mantic, they're not a big company. I think people assume that they're a lot bigger than I think they really are. I mean, all of their staff pretty much fit in one office. It's not a big concern. They're not the size of someone like Steamforge, for example, who I think other people would maybe think were a bit smaller. Steamforge have a much bigger kind of staff and office space and warehousing and things. Essentially, what you've got to realise, or what you've got to kind of see, is that to get this kind of stuff tooled up in plastic is really, really expensive. And I guess you'd be taking a real risk of how much do we make. You know, loads of it could just kind of sit there unsold. So by kickstarting it, what they're doing is they're testing the market a little bit, seeing what people want, seeing what people don't want. They are enabling the funds to get it to market if it's popular. And then it creates a big retail sort of launch for them after the Kickstarter ends, because what they've seen from the fantasy stuff that they did before was it was really popular with like RPG players, and that was something that kind of caught them out. I don't think they were really expecting it to be that popular, which is why Terrain Crate 2 has become a possibility. So it's not Kickstarter is always kind of, yeah, you've got to fork up front and you've got to wait for it, but it does have its place, and it does get things to market that ordinarily would be a huge risk. Paula says, sounds like they're sailing close to the wind financially then. I don't think so, mate. I think it is literally just more to do with the fact that you'd be surprised how much it costs to do plastic tooling. And if you see the amount of stuff that's in Terrain Crate, that's a big risk for any company. I mean, Games Workshop, for example, don't do that much scatter stuff because they've got to try and understand where the market is for it. Companies do it in resin. They do the odd piece here and there, which is a much cheaper way to do it, but it's not as robust, and you end up buying a little piece from here and a little piece from there. I can honestly say the stuff I've got, it's really cost effective to just kind of throw into a box. Michael saying, if they hadn't made Kings of War like it is now, they would have fallen over. If they did and it worked out, they would have been bigger than now in a big way. I'm not sure I really understand that one. Mark was saying he's not too keen on Mantic games yet. He wished he could produce something with a Marvel theme though. Michael saying like Dark Horse. I think the Marvel stuff was with Night Models, but I'm not sure they've still got it. Patrick was saying he's tried the hot water method loads of times. Doesn't always work though. Have you tried it where you plunge it into cold water straight afterwards as well? Because that kind of like sort of shocks it and resets the plastic, rather than putting it into hot water, bending it, and then leaving it to kind of cool. You've got to almost hold it in place and shock it in cold water. But Tim saying Marvel kill team like Skirmish with character advancement would be awesome. Preferably plastic Walking Dead like minis. I think if I remember right, one of the problems they have with the with things like the Marvel universe is that everybody is so overpowered by default. So in the Batman universe, the Batman stuff tends to be less like, it tends to be less like superpowers. It's almost like genetically modified kind of people. People like the Riddler, people like the Joker, people like, they're kind of they're criminal masterminds, if you like. If you start heading across into Marvel and you start having Spider-Man and Captain America and Hulk, they end up being a bit like the films where there's just this big blur of like, I batter you, but you don't feel it. And then you batter me back, but I don't feel it. And then Wolverine heals up kind of thing. So I think it can be quite difficult from a rule set to get right. Paulo says, I heard Steamforge were having problems. Not sure what they are, and it's just a rumour, so take it with a pinch of salt. I don't think they're necessarily having problems. I think they're basically their Dark Souls Kickstarter is running a bit late, I think, which is people are giving them a little bit of problems over that one, I think. And they're also moving some of their Guild Ball stuff. Are they moving it to resin, I think, away from plastic? And I think people are giving them, and I think they're putting the prices up as well. That's another thing. I think they're putting their prices up, which is cutting the margins to retailers. I think that's the other thing that's been happening. Mark saying not to be nitpicky, but he's Negan wasn't kickstarted. No, that's true, Mark. That was them basically giving it a try as well, because I guess they knew from the success of Walking Dead that there was a market for it. I honestly don't see a problem with kickstarting things like terrain like this. I mean, if you think about how many pieces of terrain is in that set, they've all got to be sculpted, they've all got to be molds making for them all. That must cost quite a few quid. Where are we at now? Patrick's saying he plunged it in cold water too. Sorry, mate. All I can say is mine was all right, but it doesn't mean yours wasn't, buddy. We've got Hero of the Table in, says hello. Good evening, Hero of the Table. Green Stuff Games says no, the Marvel game tanked, but we still got hero clicks. There is hero clicks. I always forget about that. Michael saying Mantic opened up their biggest game to the alternative miniatures on tournaments. If they hadn't done that, they would not have had the player base it has now. Yeah, I think you're probably not wrong. However, they were a small game at the time. They were the challenger, and Warhammer Fantasy was huge, and it was a way to get people to try the game out. And then Warhammer Fantasy was no more, and they are now the kind of dominant fantasy rank and flank, whichever one it is, rank and flank game now. Dice Tail says Doctor Who's historic. It depends upon the time, I suppose, doesn't it? Patrick said he did just back Terrain Crate too. He threw a few quid in, so perhaps pick something up later. Some of the stuff is really nice, I'll be honest. For me, it's I'm not sure which box I want yet. I think that's where I am. Michael is saying the plastics are third in line with the products. Margins still the same. First is the metals, which is why they stopped now. Then came resins. If that's sold, the plastic comes in. You basically, any company will go to plastics if the volume's big enough. I think it's less to do with the margins. I think the margins will be bigger on plastics, but you need to sell a lot of it, because I think getting it, the price per individual kind of more sort of sprue, if you like, is a lot less to produce. But the setup of the molds, and you need to run high volume of them to make your money out of them, and that's why kickstarting things in plastic is always a good idea. If you're just going to do a small amount in resin, then that's also the way to kind of to do it for that one. Patrick saying might go for Walking Dead stuff. Yeah, it looks pretty nice, doesn't it? Michael saying a good choice for the minis being designed and made in the Netherlands from new sets on. I don't know, mate. I've got no idea where they're being made. Tim saying, which box do you reckon will be good to use with Hellboy? I think potentially the Bleakwood Hall one with the Gothic Manor, with the beds and the tables and the bookcases, that kind of stuff. That's certainly my experience of playing Hellboy, was that kind of stuff. The other stuff is probably a little bit more modern and a bit more outdoors. If you're going to get stuff for Hellboy, was there not a furniture upgrade on the Hellboy Pledge Manager? I can't remember now. I didn't go for it if there was. But yeah, the Bleakwood Hall, the Gothic Manor stuff, I would imagine will probably be the best stuff for it. Johnny Jambo says, wouldn't mind a Charge of the Light Brigade game. It's historical, could be played as a war game, and we'll all place bets on which cavalry horse makes it to the Russian guns. I'd be surprised if it's not already been created. Paulo says, I have to say I like Mantic rules though. Always enjoy the games I've played. That was where I got started, really. I mean, I've always kind of said I like a more straightforward rule set, something not too overly complicated, something I can learn relatively quickly and play the game and not worry about learning the rules constantly. And Mantic have always kind of provided that. That was how I first discovered Mantic games, and that's why I've always enjoyed the stuff they do. So everything from Walking Dead, Dead Zone, Dreadball, even sort of Hellboy and things like Mars Attacks. They're good rule sets, and they're just straightforward. Even Vanguard for me as well. It's kind of it kind of clicks in my head. Some of the extra rules that you get in things like AOS and 40k are sometimes just a lot to remember, and all of the different interactions around stuff. Tim's doing the old thumbs up there. Or Michael's saying, I meant the dealer margins at Steamforge games didn't go up or down. I'm trying to remember. I was told about it the other day and I can't remember the details, mate. You see, Mantic is growing the least in Netherlands, tough, which I'm happy with. Although, sorry. Yeah. We've got Rawlord in as well. It says, hi all. Good evening, Rawlord. How are you? So we're getting towards the end of the evening now. Last kind of 10 minutes now, I think. What time are we at? Yeah, last 10 minutes now. So just a bit of a wrap up, really. So yeah, so for those that weren't in at the start of the chat, just to say that next week there'll be no Monday night live stream. I'm away on holiday for a few days with my family, so the last thing I'll be doing is taking all my kit and trying to do a live stream from our holiday. And there probably won't be any videos either next week, but I will be back as normal, fully refreshed with new videos from Monday the 18th of March. So watch out for those. There's videos all this week as well, so nothing to worry about there. But next week, just because there's no videos, I haven't stopped kind of producing stuff, just having a week off to have a holiday with the family, and then we'll be back to normal. Mark says, completely off topic, did you see the Battlehammer monthly mumble? I've not watched it yet, no mate. It's in my feed to watch, but I've not had a chance to watch them yet. It says, they mentioned you in regards to your salute video, stated you need to meet up. Thumbs up for that. Need to... Yeah, actually, I did. I actually met them last year for the one and only time at Salute, and they were dashing about. And actually, you were with me. Yeah, you remember. Yeah, and I very, very briefly chatted to them. But we chat on Twitter now and again, and the odd conversation on Instagram and stuff. They seem like really nice guys, but just I guess we've never really always played the same games. They were very much into the Guild Ball stuff at the time. And they've branched out into things like Wild West Exodus to play a lot of that. I think if we could get a game that we both play, I'd love to meet up with them and have a game at some point. Where we are. Henrik is saying there's a Dutch Championship this weekend for Kings of War this Sunday. I hope to hear how it goes, buddy. This weekend, actually, I forgot to mention, so this weekend I am at Aircon, which is a gaming convention up in Harrogate. I'm saying up. It's probably up for most of you. It's down for me, which is not too far away from York, for those that don't know where Harrogate is. And I'm meeting up with Alex Bardi there. We're going to have a game of Godfather, Corleone's Empire. We're also going to have a game of Cthulhu Pandemic. We're going to demo some new games as well. There's a few others are going to be looking to meet up as well. I think, was it... Trying to remember now. It was Craig McCartney who messaged me today as well about meeting up and saying hello. I know Tony Booth Leiden was talking about meeting up as well. So yeah, if anybody's around at Aircon at the weekend, I'm definitely going to be there all day Saturday. If anybody's around, give me a shout on Twitter, give me a shout on Facebook. I'd be more than happy to come and say hi, and it's nice to meet people face to face for a change. So that's my weekend. So yeah, so I've got a few more days at work this week. Saturday, I'm at Aircon. And then Monday, we go on holiday for 5 days. Mark saying, have a fantastic week off. Michael saying, that's when orangutans finally meet their makers. Marco says, have a good time on your holiday. Forget about YouTube. It's hard to forget about YouTube, mate, because I really enjoy it. Says, for the summer break, try and plan a few videos in advance, though. So it was always my plan to try and get ahead so that I had some in the bank, really. However, doing 5 videos a week alongside a full-time job is bloody hard work, and it takes up a lot of my free time, if not all of it. Most of my weekends are swallowed up. And to be honest, with other things I've been doing with the family and kind of having days out with the kids and stuff, it's been really hard to get ahead. So I was kind of trying to kill myself to get ahead for next week as well. And it just got to a point where it was like, you know what? I'm just going to have a week off. Somebody, I think it was Tiberius, mentioned about maybe just doing a real quick one about a bit of a tour around this room, really kind of like, where do I make my videos and stuff. So if people are interested in that, I'm sure I could probably do something like that to get a video up for next week. Maybe just drop it in on Wednesday or something, just to break the week up a little bit or something, if people are interested in that. But yeah, let me know either down in the comments on this video, or let me know in the Facebook group if you want to have a bit of a hobby room tour, really. Mark saying, I was there, yeah. It was when I was starting to talk about it. You were there beside me when we chatted to them. It says, I'm sure we can find common ground. We like to play games, we like to have a beer. I'm sure we'll find common ground. Paul also saying, pick up the Bolt Action 2-player starter, mate. You and your lad can dip your toes in. I'm tempted, mate. The only thing stopping me from diving in and picking up a Bolt Action 2-player starter is I don't want to dive into something if there's something else I'd rather try, because not next weekend, but the weekend after, not the weekend after that, is the Top Table Legacy Weekender at Element Games. And the guys from Mortal Gods are coming. They're going to do a demo, so I want to be trying that out. I'm also going to get a demo of Middle-earth strategy battle games as well. I've promised I'll give that a try. So I'm kind of worried about buying into too much stuff at the minute, but I would like the I wouldn't mind a demo actually of Bolt Action, just to see whether it's kind of my thing. Henrik saying, Andy, have a good week off. One tip, leave the phone home. Really take a week off. I wish I could, mate. I just, it's weird. I mean, there's not a great mobile phone signal where I'm going, to be fair, so I certainly won't be doing any phone calls, but I have heard that they've just installed a load of Wi-Fi there. So actually, I'll probably still get Wi-Fi. I think what I'll probably do is I'll probably leave the phone kind of in the room when I'm out with the family and stuff during the day and that, and on an evening. But if I'm just going to nip for a coffee, it, like, you know, sort of, like, I'll take the little one while my wife has a bit of a break sometimes, and she'll take him while I have a bit of a break. Maybe if I'm just going for a coffee sometime, I might kind of check in and see what's happening in the world and that. But yeah, if I'm kind of a bit quiet next week, you know why. I haven't run away and kind of quit YouTube anyway. Craig said it would be nice to see the room. Yeah, I guess you guys only really see this bit here. You kind of don't see where my computer is and all my plans on the wall and all that kind of stuff. Steve saying, yeah, hobby room tour would be cool. Marco says, will you take Pandemic Legacy with you on holiday? No. And I'll tell you the reason why we're not taking Pandemic Legacy on holiday. We're up, we played last night. Was it last night we played? Yeah, we played last night, and we've just finished September. So we've only got October, November, December left to do. There's been a big twist in it last night, and it was like, oh, it's really changed the story a bit. And we're really enjoying it, and I don't want to kind of rush through it. So, see if I can see from here. We will be taking normal Pandemic. So I recently went and bought the standard Pandemic. So I didn't have this when we bought Pandemic Legacy. I recently went and bought this. It was actually on sale. I think I only paid £20 for it in like Ryman stationery store or something like that. I was in there picking up my notice boards for the wall, and they had this in the sale for 20 quid, so I picked it up. So we've bought that for two reasons. One, to play while we're on holiday, but the other one is my mother and father-in-law are coming for a couple of nights. They're coming to stay for a couple of nights while we're there, and we thought we could play it with them when the little one goes to bed. We're going to introduce them to kind of Pandemic as well. And I've also the guys at Asmodee have been very kind and got in touch and said they're going to send me Season 2 to review as well. So I'll have Pandemic Legacy Season 2 to look forward to soon. So yeah, really looking forward to that. Let's have a look. Put the sound off, definitely, mate. It's my work phone as well, actually. I only have one phone, and it's actually my work phone. So normally it will be ringing off the hook all week while I'm working, so I'll be turning that off anyway, that's for sure. Skullmunch says, Andy, you did a video on Infinity 2-player set where you said you would record the missions in the future. Did you ever do those or still plan on doing them? I do still plan on doing them, actually. And there's a couple of times I've gone to start doing them and then something else has come in and kind of bumped it out the schedule. I've got enough painted of both sort of sides to play through about the first 4 or 5 missions now. And actually me and my wife played the first mission, and she said she would film it with me, but then I felt bad putting her on camera if she didn't really feel comfortable about it. So it's been more to do with having somebody to play it against and filming it, really. But yeah, we've played it a few times just so I can get my head around the rules. I went across to Element, and I had a game with Lee McDonald, who's now one of the new hosts on the Top Table Gaming channel. We played a couple of missions as well. So yeah, I'm definitely going to do it. That's still my plan. I'll definitely get it on the channel at some point. It's more about sort of getting Sam to play it with me. My wife said she'd play it as well, but I felt bad if she didn't feel comfortable on camera about it. That was all. So yes, if you're interested, I will definitely put them on the channel anyway. Paulos is saying Mortal Gods looks good, great price. Robertson, let you know what you think of it. Patrick said he's off. Enjoy the week off. Will do, mate. Thanks for dropping in. Henrik said next time. Patrick. Robert says he's got to go. Catch you in the chat. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks, Michael. Michael says, what? No background on your phone of my channel? No, mate, my background. Oh, it's because it's in nighttime mode at the minute. My background is actually, let's have a look. That's my background. I've got my own channel on it. That's what it is. Flying Mammal says she can wear your Vader helmet. I'm not sure if she'll be able to see what she was measuring then. Steve said, cheers, Andy. Have a great holiday. Good night. Thank you very much. And Craig says, I'll come down and play it. Craig, you are more than welcome, buddy. If anybody ever wants to play it on the channel, actually, you're all more than welcome. I'm sure we could arrange something. Certainly if you're local or you don't mind traveling or you're not too far away from me to travel, it would be awesome to get some people to play on the channel. So with that, we're at 10:30. I will say thank you, everyone. Thanks for making this another awesome chat tonight. Please leave some comments. Please give the video a bit of a thumbs up as well if you've enjoyed it tonight. Always good to kind of get the word out there. I've got a few more videos that you could look forward to this week. And then remember, next week is going to be quiet week, but there seems to be a little bit of interest in having a bit of a room tour. So I might try and do a quick one of that. Maybe on Sunday if I get a bit of time. I might do a bit of a room tour video and get that in for while I'm away, just to keep it ticking over. So, thanks very much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow in the next video.